Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest needs no introduction. Our ace reporter, Marc Z, president of Marc Z Legal Staffing. I don't know why that's a mouthful for me this morning. How you doing, Marc? Good to see you.
Nice to see you too, John. Great to be here. Great to be part of the show as always with you.
Wonderful. So I know you always have topical and timely advice for us for our entrepreneurial community. What's on your mind today?
Well, I thought it would be interesting because, as you know, we look at our business as sort of a lab for different situations going on or different hiring practices going on in the marketplace. And one of them that we're finding as the economy gets tightened in terms of demand and everything, a lot of employers are taking a step back and saying, we're hiring really competent person, but what are the costs involved if they don't work out too? So we want to make sure that everything goes as well as possible. So there are a lot of employers looking at mentoring or looking at different programs to make sure that their new hire does as well as possible. But one of the things that we're learning just in terms of employers are after competence, which is what they need to look for hiring in terms of the best person for the job. A lot of the employers now are bringing in a lot of team members into the decision-making process really immediately. So they're being front-loaded in terms of decisions being made because after
Interesting.
competence, it's also
Cultural fit
chemistry
or chemistry?
and character, and obviously
Mhm.
the person. So you want to make sure that there's good chemistry with your colleagues. It's going to work well together. So a person could be amazingly gifted and competent at what they do and have the background and skill set that the employer needs. But if they don't have chemistry with their colleagues, and then it's not going to work. And if they're
Hmm.
not of the character that the employer needs for the role with the team, that's not going to work. So increasingly, um, employers are front loading the team to meet with every candidate that's in a crucial role.
So that's really interesting because that obviously changes the dynamic, certainly for the candidate, right? You think you're going in and you're going to interview with one, two, maybe three people in general, and then before you know it, you're going through a team of 12 and people from all different potentially generations or backgrounds, etc. So I would imagine that for the candidate, it probably creates a little bit more anxiety, perhaps, or maybe not for some candidates. But complexity also because as you and I have discussed before in various segments, it probably elongates the hiring process. Obviously,
Correct.
more interviews, more people. It makes it difficult. I know that having seen a lot of people in the interview throes, my own children included, you can't always get time off of work. And you run out of excuses. So it raises a whole number of issues for prospective candidates. And so just more challenges. So I throw that out there saying, but from the employer perspective, it could also create challenges that I would see in terms of differences of opinion. So now you may get into internal debate on, I picked up this, you picked up that, but we think they're a great candidate. Now where do we go? So it must
Right.
make it a little more complicated in terms of the process in general.
No, it does make it more complicated with the process. First of all, um, a lot of candidates have a certain window for making decisions. And a lot of the employers, by having a long pace in terms of the job progression, in terms of the hiring, you're going to lose some good candidates along the process. And sometimes it's also thinking too much. So, on one hand, I think it's a really important dynamic for the employer to look at the chemistry with the team. On the other hand, they have to look at ways to shorten the process, make it long enough, but shorten the process because you are going to lose some really competent candidates who it's tough to judge on one interview whether or not they have those skills, or they have that chemistry, or they have that character. So I agree with you, and you're right. For candidates, they don't have that time to not only take off work, but they don't have that time a lot of times with their decision-making process.
I think there's another challenge that I see in taking that approach, and that is not everybody is well versed or well trained in how to interview. And my experience in particular, you work a lot more with directly with law firms and other professional service type firms, but my sense is that very often people in those roles talk about themselves a lot and talk about the organization instead of what the purpose of the interview is to learn about the candidate. And
Correct.
so, to me, it's fascinating because you run the risk of, do you really gain a lot or do you just get a sense? And I think a lot of people who think they're great judges of perhaps things like character are maybe not such great judges of character. And so, I would imagine in your role, it puts you in a position of probably, I hate to use the term sell the candidate, but based on the merits of the candidate and how well you may know the candidate, you may think it's a great fit, and they may run into reservations based on somebody who may not be a great interviewer talking to the person.
Right. No, you're right. And then you're losing out on a potentially perfect candidate for the role just because they don't have that the interviewing skills that gave the answers that the employer was looking for. Or in the case of the employer is not hearing the candidate or understanding the candidate and getting the answers because a lot of times the employers are focused on their opportunity, and they're focused on their agenda.
Right. I guess one of the questions that I would ask is are you seeing a difference in terms of your role of trying to identify the expectations both for prospective employer and candidate to try and set up a structure or a time frame that is somewhat predictable? So are you finding yourself asking them, when do you expect to make the hire? How long is the process? How many interviews do you anticipate this person's going to go through? How long will those interviews take? All of those types of things, as we said, especially with perhaps younger people or anybody that's in an existing role. How many times can you say I have a dentist appointment? If you've got to
Right,
run out 14 times to meet with people at various companies. So
right.
are you finding that presents somewhat of a logistical challenge for a lot of candidates?
Absolutely. I think that what's also a tough balance is the candidates have work responsibilities. Step out or step a meeting or an in-person meeting, but it's also um, finding the time to do the work because employers have expectations in terms of making sure the person is doing the work that they want to and achieving the results that they want to, and so you've got to keep handling that on that front, but at the same time being able to be your best on the employment interviewing front. But I agree with you in terms of what we're trying to do is we try to find out as much information as we can, just in terms of the process, in terms of the interviewing. But a lot of times when we meet people, it's at different stages of where they are and or where the employer is in terms of the interviewing process. So a lot of it is timing, a lot of it is where things are in the employer's process, where things are with the candidate and prospective employee's process. That's so
Well,
important, and a lot of times the timing is not aligned, unfortunately.
yeah, and it's unfortunate because I think people feel that candidates I could see saying, well, it feels like they're stringing me along or wasting my time. Use whatever phrase you want, but I think often that clarity is constantly changing in an employer's perspective too. Things may be pushed out for various reasons. They may have a lot of very busy times within their own firms or practices or whatever they have going on, and so or personal issues or whatever have you. You can't always control the narrative and the time frame. So
Right.
it's certainly a challenge. But overall, as we head into or have been heading into a tighter marketplace, I think we're almost like in a stage where you've got some generational perhaps tension where and we've often heard I'm not going to point fingers at any particular generation, but lack of tolerance for process sometimes, or lack of tolerance for the way things some generations may do things. So it sounds to me like we've got to, like a lot of things in this country, come closer together and not further apart in terms of how we approach things. And I think, again, putting things on the table and setting expectations early probably leads to more successful outcomes.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But then you try to create the expectations for everybody, and then unfortunately, work gets in the way.
Well, and like everything in life, a good pivot, never hurts. So,
Right.
Mark Z, President Mark Z Legal Staffing, always a pleasure to have you on. This has been a Mark
Great to
Z
be here.
moment. Mark, if people want to reach out to you, talk to you more about the services that you provide or get your insights into the marketplace, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, John, first of all, go on the wonderful Radio Entrepreneurs website, radioentrepreneurs.com. Google Mark Z, M-A-R-C, and the letter Z. MarkZLegal.com, MarkZlegal.com, and 617-338-1300. Thank you.
What wonderful. You've been listening to a Mark Z moment with Mark Zwetschgenbaum, president of Mark Z Legal Staffing, and we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.